And tell me a little bit about, let's talk a little bit about warning signs, right? What is it that we should look for? What did you learn during your journey about what those warning signs and that how we're teaching in DeeDee's Cry those warning signs?
So the most visible warning signs, and there's not always visible warning signs. When my sister died, we thought she was better. You know, she
Mhm.
had just moved into a new apartment. She had a 2-year-old son. It looked like things were looking up. But some of the warning signs is you have to pay attention and just be intentional, going deeper. If you hear somebody say, I just want to give up, right? So you need to say, what do you mean by that?
Mhm.
You know, or I can't take it anymore. The world would be better off without me.
Mhm.
Those type of things. Or even somebody giving away their prized possessions. You know, like, you know what? I have this signed football from the Patriots. I want you to have it.
Mhm.
Those right there are warning signs.
Mhm. Thank you for sharing. Here at Bridge, when I came on, so the team here, all the team members go through training to look at, to understand the verbal and the nonverbal signs of suicide or suicide ideation, and making sure that we set up a plan for our young people. We also will have our young people do an intake that looks into the emotional regulations. Have they tried to come uh, attempted any suicide attempt, and then create a safety plan while they're here in our program. So we made sure that everyone is trained. But another thing that we did recently, I want to say in the last couple of years before COVID hit, was that we got all of our therapists and anyone in our staff we trained with DBT, which is dialectical behavioral therapy, right? And it's the most validated suicidality treatment available. And we got our clinicians trained through BTEC and the Linehan Institute that came in and trained our team members here to be aware. And again, the world has it as 1 month, but we know that it's a daily conversation, a minute conversation, an hour conversation. And so we try to embed that into our systems here at Bridge, that we always have a safety plan and we always have a conversation, because it is a verbal and nonverbal cues that we need to pay attention. Can you tell me a little bit about um, how do you train emotional awareness or mental health preparedness with DeeDee's Cry or in the community, especially our community that doesn't want to talk about mental health, and what strategies do you use?
So I love that you said that at Bridge that you create a safety plan.
Mm-hmm.
Because I always say that you don't want to have a house catch on fire, then say, okay, let's train for a fire drill.
Mm-hmm.
No, you want to be prepared ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
So we always encourage people to have a plan. Like, what do you do when you get angry? What are
Mm-hmm.
some things you can do when you're frustrated, right? We don't want to wait for the crisis to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So we definitely always want to voice and let the community know you can prepare. Like, don't wait,
Mm-hmm.
right?
You
So
have something that you mentioned about your toolbox. Talk to me a
yes.
little bit about that.
So the toolbox is,
Mhm,
and this is from being a preschool teacher, right?
mhm,
Like I said, we don't wait for that child to start hitting the children to say this is what we go to.
mhm,
So we want to give people the strategies that they need, that they can have in their toolbox. So that's what they go to when they're frustrated, when they're aggravated, when they're depressed, when they're sad. So even if it's something as a certain song that lifts your spirits up.
mhm,
So, okay, put that in your toolbox, that if you're feeling aggravated, that could be one of the things on your safety plan to go to. It's
mhm,
like, okay, let me put this song on because I know it lifts my spirits.
mhm,
It could be a smell, a certain smell that gives you joy. It could be
mhm,
a photograph, um, a back rub, touching a certain part of you that makes you relax, something that you do. So we want to make sure that people are not even saying equipped with these strategies, that they're aware of these strategies.
Mhm.
I said so many times we spend more time focused on our problems than we do the solution.
Mm.
So we could be like, oh, the electric bill is due.
Mm.
I'm gonna get the electricity is gonna get cut off, instead of saying, you know what, let me pick up the phone and call and make a payment plan,
Mhm.
right? We just spend too much time stressing on the problem than actually working on the solution.
Thank you for mentioning that, Troy. And let's talk a little bit about our community, right? Talking about mental health, medication. What does that mean? Going to see a therapist. What advice would you give to anyone who wants to walk into our community to talk about mental health and to make it open?
Welcome. That's what I would say. Welcome, because it's very much needed. We need to talk about it more. We need to normalize these conversations.
Mhm.
I was at an event the other day, and that was one of the questions that someone asked, that their brother is not happy about the medication, so he doesn't take the medication.
Mhm.
So it could be as simple as, oh, okay, no, he needs to talk to his physician and see about either lowering the milligrams, up in the milligrams, or things of that nature. People, I had an interview the other day about seeing a therapist, and some people can't afford a therapist. What do you do if you can't afford a therapist? Like me, my copay with my therapist was just too much for me every week. So I changed it to every other week,
Mhm.
right? You can adjust it. You
Mhm.
can, and definitely you could go into a health center. I
Mhm.
know at my health center, they have a department that is there to help you get insurance. Like Massachusetts is one of the most health insurance states. Like if you need health insurance, Massachusetts is the place to be.
Mhm.
So definitely, I always tell people to seek out health insurance.
Yeah. So here at Bridge, what we did before COVID hit, we saw that a lot of our young people that needed to see a psychiatrist or needed to really um, uh, have longer conversations than dealing with our behavioral health therapist to really balance them out, that it would take 6, 9, 10 months to get into an appointment. And I said, we can't wait. We have these young people that are not having a shelter over their heads. They don't have a stable living situation, and their minds is racing a mile a minute. And so, yes, we created a safety plan, but we needed more to deal with any imbalances that were going on. And so we partnered with Mass General Hospital to bring psychiatrists into Bridge, because no matter how many appointments we did outside of Bridge, young people were not following through. They felt comfortable and safe in this environment. And so we worked a great partnership where the psychiatrist is embedded in our programs 2 or 3 times a week. That's part of giving out lunches. That's part of, meeting young people in the elevator. So a lot of the conversations that young people were afraid to have, especially the medication, we made it a work on making it normal and explaining what happens if one pill does not work. If you gain weight or lost weight, that milligram is not going to work. If it needs to be stored, if you don't take it at a certain time every day. So it was a lot of education. I think it's not you and it's not the medication that is not working. We just have to figure out a pattern that works best for you. And that has been a lot of grinding education and having someone embedded here that works closely with a behavioral health specialist to provide that. And having those conversations. And it's not about our young people always say, I'm not crazy. I don't need mental health. I'm not crazy. And we always say here is like, no, of course, no, you're not. Where it's cold outside, first of all, you don't have a place to live. That alone is a major stressor. If you don't have to be crazy, they're naming to see a psychiatrist. To see a psychiatrist or a therapist and explaining the difference. A psychiatrist provides medication, a therapist is someone to talk to, a counselor helps you with this, the different. It's very important for young people, for us, especially homeless young people, what are the titles and what does those titles can or cannot do? Because we always say to the young people here, if you can give me an hour or two to sit with somebody and give them everything that's going through my head a day, that is a good releaser. I like to cook, I like to dance, so I use those. What do you like to do when you have so much that you need to release? And having those normal comments, going to the gym, the basketball, we did a partnership with the wives so they can go and exercise, right? So teaching, we here at Bridge is all about teaching those escapes that we as an adults are learning how to use and being comfortable with, but our communities still don't understand. So which is very different than what it was in 1980s when you were here and being embedded. But tell me a little bit, I know there was some questions, how people, I know you say welcome to the community or welcome to talking about it, but what words or triggers can we say to somebody that say, I'm worried about you? And that can be taken too much by somebody who's not used to it. But what else would you think will be a good conversation to open up what suicide means?
So I always say that if you feel like someone is suicidal, it's best to be honest and to be direct, right? Because you don't want no miscommunication going on. That's not the time. So definitely say, do you feel like killing?
I think you froze a little bit.
Yourself today, if you're not prepared for the answer, right? So you need to be prepared for the answer, because if the answer is yes, that person does not need you to say, oh, well, I got to go pick up my child from the bus stop. Like, so make sure that you have the time to address the answer. So if the answer is yes, and you respond, how can I support you to help you through today? Because that's all you need to be focuses on, is getting that person through today, not next week. And it could be, well, can you come to the hospital with me? We know a hospital may take a few hours. So make sure you have time to give to that person once you ask that question. And you can always say, now we have 988, you know, like there's a hotline that you can call if you feel like you're in crisis, where somebody, you don't even have to call, you could text 988 to say what's going on with you and to reach out for help and resources.
How do we prepare for that answer? When you ask and say, are you suicidal? How that person that's going to ask that question, how emotionally, mentally should they prepare for that answer?
So that's a tough one, because everyone responds to things differently, but definitely just make sure you have the time to respond to that answer. So there's no right or wrong answer. It's giving that person that time. That's the most important thing. Because like I said, that time could be, can you just sit with me and hold my hand? It could mean anything. So just make sure that you have that time. The words are going to come the way they're going to come, because you know that person. So I can't say this, and that's not what that person responds to, right? But definitely make sure that you have the time to give that person.
Thank you. Oh, and how about if I'm just cutting myself, and I love role playing, so don't mind me. I'm just cutting myself, and I'm not suicidal. It's just a simple mark here. I'm not suicidal.
So I would say to that person, because I was a cutter, right? And I didn't know that wasn't okay. So the example you just gave, that was me, right? So let that person know it's not okay. Like, that's not normal. It's actually a cry for help. So if you could talk to that person in that way, just to say, okay, so I hear you say you're cutting yourself. Why do you cut yourself? For what purpose are you cutting yourself? Because for me, I would rather have the physical pain than the internal pain. That's why I was cutting myself. So if that's their answer, then you can say, do you think you need to talk to someone? Or I think you need to talk to someone. I think you should seek help, because self-harm is not good. You shouldn't be harming yourself.
How about if I say, mind your business, Toy? This is who I am. And I've been
Uh,
fine all this time.
You just made it my business by telling me,
Mm,
and I care about you. And
mhm,
so I'm going to help you and I'm going to support you.
mhm,
So tell me what you need me to do to support you to
mhm,
not do that,
mhm.
right? Because you want them to come up with the answers themselves, because you're not always going to be there.
Right.
So you can't say, go talk to somebody, go do this. You want them to come up with their own strategy so they can have them in their toolbox. So when that arises again, when
Mhm,
they're cutting themselves again and you're not around, they know what strategy to use.
mhm. That's a really important one because we do create a safety plan for our young people here while they're in our programs to make sure that we are all aware of what's happening. But then we also create the long-term plan and what does it look outside of Bridge? And if we're not here, no one's watching, how do you take care of yourself outside of Bridge? And because those reactions, that those feelings are gonna come up. I think that's also what's going on in our community, that it's like it's just a one time. I am just depressed today because I can't pay my electric bill. Or I'm just really mad today because my boss made me mad. Or and they don't see the pattern that it's a path that you've been holding on to that usually comes up in different ways, right? So, we, like I mentioned before, we talk about going to the gym, we talk about running, we talk about exercise, listening to music, eating, cooking, just what other things distract you. And we always talk about, like, you're gonna feel this feeling that you've named. What other triggers can you do other than cutting, other than taking a pill? What else can you trigger? Like, what is plan B, plan C for you that you have access? And you're right, having them come up with it is very helpful.